This is a Fox News alert. It is Donald Trump's first stop on a USA thank you tour. We'll bring it to you live right here on Tucker Carlson tonight. Our president-elect is doing something unprecedented, stopping for a huge rally in Cincinnati, Ohio. We'll take you there live as soon as Trump takes the stage. Joining me now, though, is former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, thanks a lot for coming on tonight.
Good to be with you, Tucker.
So what's the purpose of this event tonight?
Oh, I think it's partly to say thank you, partly, frankly, to get out of the transition stuff and get back to the people who made him president. I think Trump gains enormous strength from the American people, from being with them, from feeling their support, their strength, their enthusiasm. And I think that this is an integral part of why Trump is so unique. And, of course, today, here you got a guy who hasn't even been sworn in, and he's already saved 1,000 jobs and sent America a signal of what kind of an activist, job-creating, job-preserving president he's going to be. So I think he's having a pretty good day.
So the purpose of it is to reassure people that he's going to do what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail?
And to reassure himself. I mean, I think, don't underestimate how important it is for somebody who is as dynamic and as risk-taking as Trump to remind himself, to feel inside himself that he is the leader of the American people and that he carries their hopes and their dreams and their wishes. It's a very important part of who he is, and it's part of what gives him this extraordinary level of energy that we have not seen, I think, since Theodore Roosevelt in a president. He's an amazingly energetic person.
He certainly is. So who's the audience for this, other than himself, as you said?
Well, I think all of the American people. It's a pretty good reminder to the Washington establishment that they're not just going to have the new president, but they're going to have a new president leading an army of Americans who really want change and who are really going to demand change. And he's setting the stage for that. He's reminding the congressmen and the senators from Ohio. And remember, the Cincinnati also is southern Indiana. It's also a large part of Kentucky. So that media market is being saturated with a reminder that change is coming to Washington and that the American people want that change and that they are for that change.
Now, you wrote, I thought, a really interesting piece about change and the challenges any new president has in enacting the change. It was based on your experiences coming in during the Reagan administration. And you said this: solving problems feels satisfying and is an easy substitute for solving the real underlying problems. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'll give you an example. We just have a horrifying story out of Wisconsin of a dentist who didn't take care of his tools properly, who may well have infected veterans with HIV, with hepatitis. That dentist wasn't fired. That dentist is, in fact, still working at a nice job at the VA, despite what he did. Now, you could reach in and go after that one dentist, or you could say, you know, this represents a class of problems that require us to reform the civil service so we can get rid of people who do things that are this destructive, this incompetent, and that actually harm our veterans. That's getting down a layer into a much deeper issue. And I think this is pure Peter Drucker. Drucker said years ago, all great leaders see problems as symptoms of a much deeper problem. Right. And if you solve that class of problems, and this is where Trump, I think, will be remarkable, because he has a contract with the American voter. He has a new deal for African Americans. He has really committed himself to dramatic change. And I think that dramatic change comes at that level.
Politicians do generally have a weakness for symbolic gestures. And I think that's a really smart point. So the Wall Street Journal this morning had an editorial about you, and it, in effect, recommended what they called a Gingrich Commission. They said that the role you would play best in the Trump administration would be to think big about how to reduce the size of government and update it, make it more efficient, and make it more suited to the moment we're living in. Are you open to something like that?
Well, I think if President-elect Trump asked me to do something like that, I would head up such a commission. I'd only do it, of course, with his support and his enthusiasm. And I think it could be useful. It's certainly an example of the kind of thing I've talked about. I want to look across the whole system. I'll give you an example. We probably have a minimum of $110 billion a year stolen in Medicare and Medicaid, literally stolen. Now, implementing a system that would save you $1 trillion over a decade by not paying the crooks, that would be an example of a large enough change it's worth really focusing on. And I want to go through the system and find those kind of leverage points that really give us the opportunity to dramatically improve the country.
So who's it stolen by the way? By crooked doctors mostly?
Largely by doctors. And the New York Times, for example, found a dentist who was doing 993 procedures a day and
That's a
billing
lot.
for all of them.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot. It's amazing. But they also have guys who run crooked operations. They had one guy who'd been in jail for cocaine selling who came out of jail in South Florida, promptly went into stealing from Medicaid on the grounds that it was safer and easier, nobody shot you, and you actually could steal more money through Medicaid than you could get by dealing in drugs.
Yeah, it's an indoor job, which is good. But before I let you go, I want to ask you what the carrier story, 1,000 jobs saved, not going to Mexico, staying in Indiana. Being criticized by many on the left as a symbolic gesture, in effect, and not really meaningful. Can that be repeated on a larger scale over the next 4 years?
And will be, I think. It will be because if you look at what Carrier needs, they need regulatory help, they need tax help. If you do those things for every business in America, all of them are better off, more of them are more likely to stay. But notice how totally whacked out the Democrats are. They used to be the party of working Americans. Now they're so elitist. They're made up of people who are so wealthy, they have contempt for 1,000 jobs. Let me tell you, there are 1,000 families in Indiana who are happier tonight, who have a better Christmas because of Donald J. Trump. That is not a small thing, and I think has sent a signal of hope to all of America.
Right. But what does it have to do with global warming? I mean, I think that's kind of the key question.
And there you have it. Everybody who thinks it's better to kill the jobs on behalf of the Paris Accord, you should be a liberal Democrat. Everybody who thinks working Americans and working families and a better Christmas, you should be for Donald J. Trump.
The Speaker,
how's that for?
I think you summed it up. Great to see you tonight. Thank you very much for doing that.
Thanks, Tucker.
Want to go down to our senior national correspondent, John Roberts, who is live inside the scene of the Trump rally coming up. John?
And talking about a better Christmas, Tucker, there are a number of people in the crowd tonight who are either dressed as Santa Claus or wearing Santa hats. I should tell you here that the U.S. Bank Arena has been a little slow to fill up. The reason why, the police had the area cordoned off for the arrival of Donald Trump's motorcade, but now that the barricades have been lifted, people are starting to stream in the doors. The last time Donald Trump was here, and forgive my addled memory for not remembering the exact date, but it was about 5 weeks ago, there were 16,000 people in this arena. It holds 18,000. We're expecting that if they can get them in, and Trump has delayed his appearance now by 40 minutes to allow more people to get in, they could easily top that. The speech tonight will be a big thank you to the state of Ohio, which helped to push Trump over the top. He won it 52-43 over Hillary Clinton, won a lot of different demographics, did not win African Americans, lost women by 3 points, but won so many other different demographics, including both college and non-college educated people. He will be introduced by his running mate, Mike Pence. The two of them were together earlier today in Indianapolis, where they were at that Carrier furnace plant, where they said that they had cut a deal to save some 1,100 jobs that otherwise would have moved to Mexico. And Tucker, we're learning a little bit more about the remainder of the jobs that Donald Trump has got to fill out in his cabinet. There are some news organizations that are saying that General Mattis is a done deal as Secretary of Defense. I was told early this morning that it's pretty close to a done deal. It's maybe as close as you could get, that Donald Trump really wants Mattis to be his Secretary of Defense. He's the guy that he's all but settled on, but it's not 100% because of a couple of issues. First of all, Trump wants to take a little more time to think about that and Secretary of State. Those are the two really biggest appointments that he has to make. And the fact that, as well, Mattis would need a waiver to be Secretary of Defense because the law stipulates you've got to be retired for 7 years before you can take on a civilian position at the DOD. And the last time this happened was back in 1950 when George Marshall was appointed to head the Pentagon. That required a congressional law to be enacted to allow him to do it. Different time back then. Just after World War II, Marshall had already spent 4 years as Secretary of State. So they just want to make sure that everybody is on board with the idea of Mattis. And it does seem like it's heading that way before they announce him. But it's as close to a sure thing as you can get, I think, at this point, Tucker. We'll learn about it probably next week.
So, John, this is kind of a little off, but whatever happened to Dr. Ben Carson? I think it was a week ago anyway that he was offered the HUD job. Have we heard back on that? Is there any update?
That's another one that they're not in any kind of a rush to get out. There's a number of things. There's SecDef, there's Secretary of State, there's also Department of Homeland Security that they have yet to talk about yet. So I think what they're doing is they're rolling these things out slowly. But today they didn't want to step on the carrier message. They didn't want to step on the beginning of this thank you tour. The thank you tour is going to continue into next week as well. So I would imagine that the remainder of the cabinet announcements will come out in dribs and drabs over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Why wouldn't they? John, thanks a lot for that. Thanks for the update.
Thanks, Tucker.
Well, earlier today, the president-elect visited a Carrier air conditioning plant in Indianapolis, where he claimed victory for saving about 1,000 manufacturing jobs. Here's part of what he said after touring that plant. Watch.
About a week ago, I was watching the nightly news. I won't say which one, because I don't want to give them credit, because I don't like them much, I'll be honest. I don't like them, not even a little bit. But they were doing a story on Carrier. And I say, wow, that's something. I want to see that. And they had a gentleman, worker, great guy, handsome guy. He was on. And it was like he didn't even know they were leaving. He said something to the effect, no, we're not leaving, because Donald Trump promised us that we're not leaving. At first I said, I wonder if he's being sarcastic, because this ship has sailed. And then I said, it was 6:30 in the evening, and I said, boy, the first thing I'm going to do is go there, and I say, do I call the head of Carrier, who's a great guy? But I've always learned I got to call the top. And I heard about Greg Hayes. He's a great executive. You know, I don't know if you know, United Technologies is one of the top 50 companies in the United States, and one of the top companies anywhere in the world. They make many other things other than air conditioners, believe me. Their list of companies is incredible. So I called Greg Hayes. I heard of him, but I never met him. And he picked up the phone, Mr. President-elect, sir, how are you? It's wonderful to win. You know, think if I lost, he wouldn't have returned my call. I don't know where is Greg? I don't know. Would you return? If I lost and called you, I don't think you would have called. I would have tried for you guys, but I think it would have been tougher, right? What do you think, Greg? Yeah, he's sort of nodding. Yes, you're right. But I called Greg and I said, it's really important. We have to do something, because you have a lot of people leaving. And you have to understand, we can't allow this to happen anymore with our country. So many jobs are leaving and going to other countries, not just Mexico, many, many countries. And China is making so much of our product that we're closing up a lot of plants. And I mean, I wrote down some numbers that are incredible, but the numbers of manufacturing jobs that are lost, especially in the Rust Belt, and the Rust Belt is so incredible, but we're losing companies. It's unbelievable, one after another, just one after another. So I said, Greg, you got to help us out here. We got to sit down. We got to do something. I said, because we just can't let it happen. Anyway, he was incredible. And he said, I understand. And I said, I wish I made this call a year and a half ago. It would have been a lot easier call. But I will tell you that United Technologies and Carrier stepped it up. And now they're keeping, actually, the number's over 1,100 people, which is so great, And I see the people. I shook hands with a lot of the people. They're right behind us working. I guess, what is it? You're making so many air conditioners, you didn't want to even have them come off for a half hour. He's a ruthless boss. He's ruthless. But that's okay. You know, I did say one thing to the Carrier folks and to the United Technologies folks. I said, the goodwill that you have engendered by doing this all over the world, frankly, but within our country, you watch how fast you're going to make it up, because so many people are going to be buying Carrier air conditioners. United Technologies has stepped up, and I have to say this. They did it in such a nice and such a professional way, and they're going to spend so much money on renovating this plant. And I said, Greg, say that number. You know, he said 16 million. Well, the minimum number is 16. It's going to be, in my opinion, a lot more than that. He said, well, I'd rather say the lower number. See, I'd rather have him say the higher number, so I won't say it, okay? It's just a difference in philosophy. Do you agree? Both are okay, but difference in philosophy. But they're going to spend more than 16. They're going to spend a lot of money on the plant. And I said to some of the folks, I said, companies are not going to leave the United States anymore without consequences. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'll tell you right now. We're losing so much. So one of the things we're doing to keep them is we're going to be lowering our business tax from 35%, hopefully down to 15%, which would take us from the highest tax nation virtually in the world. This is terrible for business. To one of the lower tax, not the lowest yet, but one of the lower tax. The other thing we're doing is regulations. The regulations are, in fact, if I asked Greg and your folks, you would probably say regulations might be worse for you than even the high taxes, which is the biggest surprise of the whole political experience. I thought taxes would be number one, regulations would be up there someplace. Believe me, these great leaders of industry and even the small business people who are just being crushed, if they had their choice between lower taxes and a major, massive cutting of regulations, they would take the regulations. 6 of 8 of the air conditioning companies right now are located in Mexico. 6 of 8. I mean, think of that. And 80% of the supply chain for Mexico, 80% is located in Mexico. And we're not going to have it anymore. So we're not going to have it anymore. And we like Mexico. We think it's wonderful. I was there 3 months ago with the president of Mexico. Terrific guy. But we have to have a fair shake. We're not getting anything. We have NAFTA, which is a total and complete disaster. It's a total and complete disaster. It's a 1-lane highway into Mexico. Nothing coming our way, everything going their way. And I don't have to mention who signed it anymore. It's so nice. I don't have to mention who backed it anymore, right? We don't have to mention that anymore, fortunately. But it's a one-way street. We're going to be doing this, and if I have to tell you, during speeches I'd say, they say it's not presidential to call up these massive leaders of business. I think it's very presidential. And if it's not presidential, that's okay. That's okay, because I actually like doing it. But we're going to have a lot of great people that can also do it and do it as well as I do it. But we're going to have a lot of phone calls made to companies when they say they're thinking about leaving this country, because they're not leaving this country. They're not going to leave this country. And the workers are going to keep their jobs. And they can leave from state to state. And they can negotiate good deals with the different states and all of that. But leaving the country is going to be very, very difficult.
Well, joining us now is the co-host of The Five, our old friend, Kimberly Guilfoyle.
Yes.
Kimberly, that they're not leaving the country.
No, and I love it. He's like, no, 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 you're not going anywhere. I like that, though. You've got to, get out right in front of it. And before he's even sworn into office, or before we have the inaugural ball, he's getting out there and saying, this is an example of what I can do, like I promised you, and in fact, we're going to save jobs. And think about this.
So the wall is a dual purpose, is what you're saying.
Of course. And then now the whole thing that I love here is think about the holidays. Can't you, Tucker, for a moment?
Of course. Are you kidding?
Holidays coming up. Now their families, 1,100, they're going to be able to sit together at the Christmas table and have jobs thanks to the carrier deal. This is really, I think, not only something that we can look at that's inspirational, it's something really that is symbolic about what his campaign was about the forgotten people, about the working men and women that felt that no one was listening to them. And he's saying, when he was campaigning, and he's reiterating it again today, I heard you, and I'm delivering. And I like that. He's not waiting till he's sworn in. He's doing it now. And I'm looking forward to seeing what else is going to happen. I love to hear about jobs saved, and I love to hear about developing manufacturing and textiles and automotive,
exactly.
Trickle it down to make sure. Why do we have to export America? Why do we have to export America?
Well, I think he's speaking to an instinct that people have that is rarely articulated, that a finance-based economy is inferior to a manufacturing economy. You ought to make something, and maybe it's hard to defend that as a matter of economics, but it doesn't make it any less real a feeling that a lot of people have. Yeah,
and when you've seen the past 8 years of the Obama administration, job killing in terms of these mythical green energy things like Solyndra, spending billions of dollars that things didn't work, while at the same time putting a chokehold on the coal industry, on those working families that have breathed coal their whole life. wanting to work it, wanting to do that. They don't want a handout. They want to do the job that they were raised up with multiple generations, that they feel proud about when they go home at night and they wake up in the morning to put food on the table for their families and be able to give their kids a good education. I totally relate to that, and I think because President-elect Trump worked so hard and went across this country and actually met people and looked them in the eye face to face to hear them, to actually hear what they were saying, not political lip service, and then do something about it. Good for him.
The White House spokesman said today, when asked about this carrier deal, said, yeah, it's fine, but it pales in comparison to the number of manufacturing jobs the president has created during his time. And I think they cited 800,000 or something. I was not aware of that. I thought we had a net loss.
Right. Well,
of
but
manufacturing
they can
jobs.
always do some kind of shape-shifting with the numbers. But by the way, how sort of just small and petty was that? Now, how about saying, you know, we're really glad that these families are going to have the jobs. Like, do something that's not just so politically narcissistic to just say how great you were when, in fact, something good is happening for American people. This is why, because they were tone deaf, that they lost the election. The Democrats did. And because they don't understand and they're not listening and they don't hear people, they weren't able to get the votes across this country that the President-elect Trump was able to get. They should learn from that. Instead, they're doing more of the same by keeping Nancy Pelosi in power just because she's able to get the monopoly money and scared everyone else from coming in seriously against her. So, you know, if you like losing, keep doing it.
Seems like one of the lessons of the last election is that money doesn't bring you victory, actually. Maybe money's less important than we think it is.
And money can't buy you love.
No, it can't. Thank you. Kimberly Guilfoyle, ladies and gentlemen. Ending, as always, on a deep note. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, we're here waiting for Donald Trump to take the stage in Cincinnati to kick off his thank you tour. He's capping off a big day that saw him visit the Carrier air conditioning plant as well. We have more on this. Stay tuned.